Here is an interview with the very talented photographer and AI artist Nikki Harrison.
I have been a photo artist now for about 14 years. When I was in school, I was always into traditional drawing and painting. When I picked up a camera, I wasn't that into it until I realized that you could go into Photoshop and manipulate and actually create works of art. I've always been drawn to the more artistic side of photography.
So a lot of your photography is more a starting point, and then you do a lot in post to make it the artwork you imagine it to be.
Exactly. But I also I'll create a lot of the costumes. I'll make them myself. I will make an entire outfit out of just fabric by using safety pins sometimes. And, a lot of the forethought that goes into the session as well is just as important as what I do afterwards in post.
How did you do the photography work before AI?
I've got tons of backdrops and I only use AI for composites. I still keep the subject of my images photographic. But what AI has changed for me is that now I can look at a subject that I've already shot and I can just dream up an environment that I want to put them into. And then I just go right to Midjourney and I make that. Where before I couldn't necessarily find an image that I wanted to use. Now I can just make it. For instance, I sent you a picture of a mermaid. I knew in my mind when I took that shot that that was the type of environment I wanted to place her in, but I could not find the right environment. And I shot that 2 years ago. So I just made that the other day and the model said, "This is exactly what you said you wanted to do. I can't believe you finally did it." And I said, well, I had to make the background in order to make it happen. So that's where it's changed for me. It's just opened a door of more opportunity for me to find images that work with my ideas.
Can you say a little bit about the process on how did you prepare before AI?
Prior, if I was going to do a composite, I would just shoot them on a gray background and I would light them a very specific way. I would have to find the back plate that I wanted to use as the base layer before I did the shoot, because I would have to match the lighting on the subject to the environment in the backplate. Now it's opposite. So it's changed in that now I can just shoot willy-nilly in any lighting condition that I want, knowing that I can go in afterwards and create that background or backplate environment to be exactly what I want to mimic the way I shot it.
And the backdrops you used in the past, they have been digital too, or you use these studio backdrops that you have to hang up, like these fabric backdrops?
In my store, I actually sell a ton of digital backdrops as well. But for images where I'm not using a composite technique, I will literally build a set in my studios. I will put a backdrop up, but then I'll build a set around it. So I'll put in furniture, I'll put in props, things like that to create an actual room or an environment.
And I saw in some of your works that part of the costume is now also AI, like I think the wings, for example.
Yeah, sometimes. I do actually have a bunch of real fairy wings, but I wanted to see what Midjourney could create as far as more elaborate, bejeweled fairy wings.
You said that now you can do any kind of light setup and then render the AI afterwards, but how do you control the light in the AI output to have the right angle?
The angle is always a roll of the dice, right? And then again, I can manipulate in Photoshop. I don't just roll a background, prompt it, make it, and then push it in. I have to take it into Photoshop and drastically fix it in post as well and change the lighting and the mood and everything else.
Do you feel like AI is a competition for photography?
It's a controversy, isn't it? There's a lot of people worried, scared with this new technology. But in all honesty, I think that the photography community worldwide needs to either embrace it and learn how to work with it, or completely ignore it and just do their own thing. But I think it's here to stay. And if anything, it's going to get more robust and more capable. So I know digital artists are really worried that they're going to lose their job and have to find something else to do. Do I think it's bad for photography? No. If you're a photographer, especially if you're a portrait photographer, people hire you to create images of their likeness, of them. So it's not like AI is going to turn around and create the portraits that they want of their family. So I don't think that, portrait photographers, wedding photographers have anything to worry about whatsoever. Now, if you get into architecture or mock-ups of different things, maybe they have something to worry about, because AI is really good at that, especially landscapes and architectural type of images. So I don't know if digital artists should really look at AI as a competition. I think they should look at it as a tool that they can use in their tool chest. Having the mindset that you're in competition with AI is the wrong way to look at it, because you can't compete with a database of millions of images. Find a way for it to work within your own workflow that's easy for you, that you enjoy. That's my take on it.
I see it the same way. I can understand that people feel the competition, especially because now for a lot of people, it doesn't take too much effort to arrive at really amazing results. But at the same time, if you have a seasoned artist with a lot of connections and experience and knowledge, they should still be on top of those things, and they can also use these tools. So they have a huge advantage, and they have the knowledge on how to create good ideas that work with their own community and the customers. While when you look at the community stream right now, it feels like everybody's doing the same thing, like you have seen a million times before. And artists create something that goes beyond that and has actual interesting, good ideas in that, right?
100%. A 10-year-old can go onto Midjourney and put cute Pixar bunny and come up with the identical thing that a 40-year-old did. So does it take skill? It just takes copying other people's prompt. I tell people, if you have no idea what prompts to put in Midjourney, just go to the community feed and find images you like and try out those prompts. But what I always do, if I do see an image that inspires me and I'm like, oh, wow, I would love to recreate something like this, is I copy the prompt, but then I change it. I add things, I take away things, and then I make it my own that way. Like do something with that image, create it, make it your own afterwards. I don't know if you've noticed this, but to me, especially if I'm scrolling through social media, all of the images look the same if nobody does anything to them afterwards.
I think they look the same because people are just using prompts and only describe the content and maybe use a famous artist name to get a better result, but they don't try to overcome the Midjourney style and use image inputs or sketches or render image to image stuff like that to create their own style. Do you have interesting new plans or do some really out of the world works?
I don't know about out of the world, but I have specific plans for Halloween and Christmas. I'm super excited what I can generate and create. Every year, my husband dresses up in our Santa suit for my granddaughter. And so I always do really artistic Santa portraits every year for Christmas. So now with AI, I can create the background images that I've been dreaming of, but I've never been able to really find or create myself. Also, I am doing my own line of Christmas cards, and this was made in AI, and then it was edited in Photoshop, and then I printed it on Hahnemühle fine art paper. So I've got a whole series of these that I'm coming up with that I'm going to sell because they're so pretty. So just little things like that. We do really, really fun themed portraits for Halloween for families. So I've got so many Halloween AI backgrounds already made for that. That's what I'm thinking of in the next few months anyway, because we don't even know how AI is going to change in the next few months. So I can't even predict what next year is going to look like.
Do you sell them on your website, or how can people get to these cards?
Yeah, they will be on my website, Nikki, Nikki art.ca. That's where I sell actions and overlays and textures.
Okay, cool. I need to check that out. What is your biggest fear about AI art?
I don't particularly have any fear over it because I photograph people. And people are always going to want to be photographed. So I have no fear whatsoever. I see it as a tool. Do you have a fear?
For example, it comes to mind that you can do basically filters and effects with AI, that the stores like you have or I have, where we sell effects for photo editing, that might be replaced by just AI filters in Photoshop.
I don't know. I've always been very manual when it comes to editing. I make actions, I sell actions, and my actions that I make are for specific lighting situations because, in all honesty, that set of presets is only going to work on images shot in that exact lighting condition. So am I worried that AI is going to do all the work? Well, if AI can do what I do, then I'll just quit.
Photoshop has these neural filters, and some of them are really interesting. I recently made a video how to manually create fake depth of field in a photo. And then I also showed this neural filter in Photoshop, which does it automatically. It's not always 100% right, but it looks a lot better and it's a lot faster than what you could do manually. Also for the relighting and all these kind of things, maybe even digital backdrops, when the AI understands the perspective and lighting of the character in the photo and then can create a background for that is perspectively and lighting wise correct. Because at that point, why would you buy a backdrop that you have to fit the photo to if the AI can fit the background to the photo?
There's some features in Photoshop that I use that are AI. In Adobe Camera Raw, you can go in and you can use the masking feature to adjust the sky or the subject or the environment. I love that. I love that capability. Things like that, I think, are tools and they're great. But my creative process includes every single aspect of making an image. If you have no creative input, you just take a generic shot with your camera and then you click a button and let AI do the rest. That's not fun.
It's also that I always think, even with all these tools, the problem is that people often don't have the experience or artistic knowledge on how to actually use them together with their work.
It's the people who put the time in, the investment of learning, and you do it over and over and over again, that those are the people that stand out because they're the ones that refine their skill set and they perfect it to the point where it's an, oh my gosh, look at this person's work. That's absolutely amazing.
I'm really happy right now that all these prompts are open on Stable Diffusion and Midjourney, because if it would be closed, nobody would create any interesting images right now, except of a few people. I have done like art all of my life, but I learned so many new artist names now that I've never heard before. And you can see how much it propels the art in AI by sharing the knowledge, right?
Also, like when you put a prompt in, you're probably not going to get anything close to what they did, because every time it's generated, it's rolling the dice. That's why I always end up changing words and phrases and lighting and colors in that prompt just to kind of get something different out of it. So what I don't understand, you've probably seen that there's actual artists that are upset that their images are being used in the making of AI images. I mean, I haven't seen an image that was 100% replicated to an artist yet.
What is your favorite thing about AI art?
That you can choose to create a painting effect or you can create a photographic effect. So the image of my mermaid that I sent you, that one was totally photographic. Like I did not want any brush strokes, I wanted it to look like a photograph. And so if you use test P prompt at the end, then it really looks photographic. It creates and renders the most incredibly beautiful, perfect photographs.
What AI tools are you using?
I just use Midjourney for my art, for the art backgrounds that I make. I don't use Stable Diffusion. I just use Midjourney. I love the way Midjourney creates art, landscapes, or environments. I think Midjourney kills it. I love Midjourney for the artistic stuff. I like Stable Diffusion for the photographic ones. That's all I use. I've tried Disco Diffusion, never really mastered it very well, and I just find Midjourney to be much more user-friendly. That image is actually a part of one of my new AI backgrounds that I have in my store. So yeah, that was shot in studio and at a shallow depth of field. So I definitely needed to use some field blur in the AI image background to blur it out so that it matched the subject. And then I also use PNG files of weeds and plants around the subject that are tack sharp so that it really sells the composite and sells it to make it look like she's standing there, but the rest is just depth of field.
So these, some of these flowers in the foreground are not actually AI, they are photos.
Yeah.
How much of them? Like all of them?
No, just pieces.
And did you took them yourself? You have an archive for these wildflowers, or you look for them on stock pages?
Oh, I actually get them from a photo smashing website. It's called Photo Bash. And that's actually one of the places that I used to get the majority of my backdrops for composites, because they have a much more robust selection of various types of environments and moods and scenes. But they also have a great archive of PNG files, whether they are coniferous trees or plants or boulders. If you've ever done any photo bashing, those are super helpful and they're wonderful to work with.
In that image, the foreground and the background is the same AI render, or did you use several AI renders?
That image was 2 AI renders created into one image and then adjusted to suit the subject in Photoshop.
It's really amazing how well the foreground fits from the perspective. In that photograph, and this is kind of also, I think, classic for this kind of style of photography, is that the light that is falling on the person doesn't really make sense in that situation, but artistically, of course, it's very useful.
No, I think you're wrong. Sorry. Because if you do any off-camera flash outside with a subject, that is very possible, especially if you use continuous lighting outside in that environment. That's the exact light that you would get.
Absolutely. Yes, you're absolutely right about that. What I meant is, like, if you would photograph it without artificial light, there would be no reason why there would be lights naturally in that kind of situation. So sometimes face where people say, is this a planet with 2 suns because the sun is coming from the back and from the front at the same time?
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. You know, when I started photography, I went to the camera store and I bought my first camera and my first lens. And the guy who sold it to me was this old fella. And I said, so do you have any pointers for a brand new photographer? And he goes, use off-camera flash outside. That will set you apart right now. So the first thing that I did after I got my camera was I bought flash and I learned all about flash. I never shot natural light for the first 5 years of my journey.
By the way, there are some that look like complete paintings.
That was intentional. I shot Emily in studio. I actually did a Cinderella series out of that set that I did. Total composite work with a pumpkin carriage and a stallion and all that stuff. And I knew when I shot that at some point I wanted to recreate old master style painting with that. So that was totally intentional with the way that I edited that to make it look like a painting.
And I guess the doves and these elements are again from that PhotoBash page, right?
No, the doves are just stock from Adobe.
Okay.
No, I don't think the PhotoBash has any animal PNG.
With the Adobe stock, do you have to buy it every time you use it, or you buy it once and then forever?
Yeah, you license it once and it's licensed, and then you use it forever.
Where do you get the dresses from? Do you rent them? How does it work?
That was her dress, but for the most part, I will go and thrift. So I'll go to thrift stores. I don't buy anything brand new.
Do you want to like say something about where to find you, if people can book you or stuff like that?
Okay, so if you're interested in learning from me, I have a Teachable School, and those are edit courses typically. My YouTube channel, take a look at that if you want. And my store is nikkiart.ca, and that's Nikki art.ca. And I'm actually in Western Canada, so I'm about 4 hours east of Vancouver, if you're familiar with that. If you ever are coming to my area, I'm in the Okanagan. You can always reach out and book a session if you want to.